Hello and welcome to the 1916 Company podcast. We're back from Geneva and it's good to return. If you have any topics, questions, suggestions for future shows, this is an interactive experience. Please reach out to podcasts at the1916company.com and we will do our best to address everything that comes to your mind. But like I said, we are within the denouement period of Watches and Wonders. And now that we've all come down from the high, I was there. Armand was arguably getting a better view of it than I did through the mainstream media. It's hard to see from inside the show what really shines at the show. So we've got both the insiders and the outsiders' perspective. Armand, what stood out for you?
I'll tell you what, I sound like a broken record, I feel like, almost every year. But Cartier this year with the Cartier Guichet. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not the best with French, so bear with me. Oh my gosh, Tim. You know me. I'm a yellow gold guy. The yellow gold Cartier Guichet on the very appropriately colored kind of olive drab alligator green strap is near perfection to me. It has this Art Deco design, this almost timelessness in its design that just blew me away. And it's not like I haven't seen the watch, but Cartier does a fantastic job at very, very loyal retellings of stories. And this is a really perfect example of that.
I would say that what's interesting here is that this is a real rarity. There are some Cartier watches, like various versions of the Santos, various versions of the Tank, various versions of the Ballon Bleu and Rotonde de Cartier, that are almost always in the collection. Then there are things like the Pebble and the Crash and the Cartier Guichet that come along almost once in a generation. So let's just confront head on the price of it, because some people have objected to the price. If you want the limited edition 200-piece platinum oblique, which has the off-centered minutes, it's going to be $61,000. If you want the regular platinum model, it's going to be $55,000. And if you want it in yellow or rose gold, it's going to be $47,700. So here's the thing. In my lifetime, this watch has only been made, well, this is the third time now. So the original model came out in 1928 and was envisioned as a watch for a driver because you didn't really need the minutes so much as you just needed to look quickly and see the hours. That was the idea. Whether it's actually easier to read than a regular watch is up for debate, but that was the idea. So 1921, or 28, pardon me, fast forward to the end of 1997, and there's a very limited run of them, and I think that's 150 pieces. And then another limited run in 2005, and nothing for 20 years. Until today. So look, whether you buy the regular version of this or the limited production platinum model, this is not going to stick around. We're not going to be talking about this watch as a regular feature of the catalog in 5 years, maybe not even in 2 or 3. So the price is high, but luxury is partially about scarcity, and value is partially about scarcity. And this is not going to be a mass-produced watch over a long period of time.
Not by any stretch of the word, and that's very much why I'm not offended at all by the pricing. You know, this is going to be a watch that's, I mean, there's going to be a little bit of collector backlash on this statement, but isn't going to be for everybody. Not everybody will have access to this. They will make remarkably few for a relatively largely produced brand, and it won't be offered to everybody. It won't be available to everybody. I have a feeling that this is going to be distributed through the boutiques only. What we shall see, but historically with special models like this, they keep it very close to the chest.
Two other things I like. They went back to the bullhead crown of the 1928 original because the remakes from 97 and 2005, they had a conventional 3 o'clock crown. They were elegant and all, but you could immediately tell that this was a modern movement repurposed. Now Cartier has a movement that has been tailor-made for this watch. It's 43-hour power reserve, it's manual wind, and part of the benefit of going manual wind is that this watch is 6 millimeters thick, which is genuinely thin. And so this is going to be a great fit. It's only going to be about 37 millimeters by maybe 26 if you want like a rule of thumb estimation of the size. This is going to be both for men and women. This is going to be a watch that looks really almost indistinguishable to the common observer from a true vintage piece in size and proportion and design. It's a really good offering. I know if you want something more mass-produced, of course, Cartier had many, many novelties. They always do. But this is the most watch nerd watch that they launched this year. So for me, I mean, this is going to seem like a recap of my Monday show, but if you were watching on April 14th on Watches Tonight, I talked about the Zenith caliber 135 Georges Favre-Jacot. Oh my gosh, that watch, 39 millimeters in platinum, 160 pieces for the anniversary of Zenith. This is year 160 for the manufacturer. It's a unique case. It's even got a unique G.F.J crown and a pin buckle made just for the model. Everything about this is bespoke. The dial is a lapis lazuli. The subdial for the seconds is blue mother of pearl. The movement, the 135, was originally made from 1948 to 1962. About 11,000 were made. It was a famous chronometry trials champion. And it would have been enough to just bring it back, clean it up, decorate it, and put it in a case. And that's what, well, Zenith did 3 years ago with the Carré Vaudelaine and 135.0 Observatoire. But that was the old movement brought back. This is now a movement that will be in series production once again. It's not new old stock pulled out of a case someplace. These are newly manufactured. Power reserve from the original was 40, now it's 72. The original didn't have hacking, now it does. The original didn't have autologerie finish, now it does. The original wasn't delivered as a certified chronometer in every instance, now it will be. So big changes have been made to this movement to add value to what was already a welcome return.
To me, this is very cool too, because it's, Zenith, to its credit, truthfully, rests a lot on El Primero. And El Primero is a fabled, legendary movement. But, we're seeing that there are other fabled and legendary movements within Zenith's manufacture, within their history, that they can reproduce in a really interesting way. This watch is very much left of center of Zenith's standard, and I think to its credit, I think it attracts a different type of collector to the brand, and it kind of just shows the brand's prowess at various types of production that it's truthfully not used to and that its collectors are not used to.
Yeah, the company's made more of a concerted effort in recent years to get away from chronographs. There have been Dayfi sports watch reeditions from the 70s and late 60s. There have been Dayfi Skyline models that are not chronographs. There have been offerings like this new 135 revival that are not chronographs. And it's very difficult when it's almost like a blessing and a curse to be really well known for one thing. Zenith's been known for chronographs, just like AP's been known for the Royal Oak and Blancpain's been known for high-end dive watches. And it's very difficult to break out of that cage, but Zenith has been pushing more and more in that direction. First, really, with the vintage reeditions, then with the Dayfi Skyline, and now here with the 135. I feel like they're reminding people that they want to be spoken of in the same breath as Jaeger-LeCoultre, not necessarily, Blancpain, not necessarily AP. It's prestigious and all, but you ask people, what does AP make? And people tell you Royal Oaks or Royal Oak Offshores. I think Zenith wants you to answer beautiful watches, fine watches, many different types of worthwhile watches. Like Jaeger-LeCoultre or Glasuta Original, which has a broad range of fantastic watches made in a real manufacturer. This is a good move in that direction. The question is, what do they use to follow up? Because, that's the challenge. How do you serialize this sort of thing without compromising what was special about the original?
And historically, that is the Achilles heel of Zenith, is the follow-up. They can have a really, major drop and it gets the industry talking about their orological prowess, and then it is a bit difficult to follow up with, because how much value do you place on case? How much value do you place on dial? The movement we've talked about is very cool, very interesting. But you can't just take this movement and put it into an $8,000 watch now.
No, and you shouldn't, because first of all, these are expensive. This is a $50,000 watch, and that's before we talk about the platinum bracelet that I was not able to see, although I saw a photo of it at the show.
There's a platinum bracelet.
A full platinum bracelet that also features that brick masonry motif that's on the dial of this watch.
Now that, all right, you know what? I'm offended that they didn't come out with that just right out of the gate on this as part of the release. The watch is already expensive. Let's be completely flat out and honest for what it is from the brand that it's from. Bring it out with the full platinum. That is a dream to me.
And let me be clear, it's not some sort of integrated platinum bracelet. Doesn't turn it into a Nautilus or a Royal Oak. It is a traditional dress watch bracelet for a watch that was designed with a strap as the baseline assumption.
That's amazing.
Now, the watch is expensive, and I think the reason that they didn't launch it with the bracelet, or at least didn't show the bracelet initially, is because they wanted to have a price pre-tariff, which may remain the price in perpetuity depending on what happens, but they wanted a pre-tariff price of $49,000. They did not want this to be a $50,000 watch, and they did hit their target. Obviously, a full platinum bracelet would cost 5 figures no matter how you slice it as an option. So they've held back a little bit, but I've seen it and it's excellent.
What do you think the premium on the bracelet is in this case? If you had to guess.
In platinum, I'd say 15,000.
Okay.
I would say, yeah.
It's a little less than I was expecting, to be honest with you.
You think so? Yeah, I mean, I know what an FP Journe platinum bracelet
likewise.
costs. Yeah, much more than that, more than twice as much as that.
I know what Patek platinum bracelets cost too, and it is no small number.
I think that because they're going to gear up to make this for a watch that costs $49,000, I think they will find a way to sell it for somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000. Because I think if it's otherwise, it's going to be mental.
Yeah,
I can't see a world where the watch costs half, or the bracelet costs half as much as the watch. And platinum, for whatever reason, it's not historically the case, but lately it is less expensive than gold as a raw material.
Significantly. I think gold's a little over 3x what platinum is per ounce.
The difference, though, is that a platinum bracelet on a watch is 95% platinum, whereas a gold bracelet on a watch is 75% gold with a lot of secondaries like copper. So I'm not exactly sure how the price comparison shakes out. It will be very expensive, guys. And when we know, we will tell you. What else did you like?
That's exciting. Gosh, you just blew my mind with that, honestly. You know, I'm jumping out of my box a little bit with this.
That's fine.
But the Biver pieces that were released, I really, really like those. I have been yearning for more yellow gold. You know, maybe we'll call it slightly modern. I would call these modern dress watches. I've been yearning for more yellow gold and or black dial or black accented watches, and Biver answered my yearning. I mean, these two pieces are very cool. You know, it's a kind of a vintage modern classic in a few ways. You have really interesting lugs. You have very classic dial layout, very classic handset, and just a beautiful finishing through and through. I really, really like these. They're a little bit more on the casual side of dress to me, to be completely honest with you. But I think that's due to the case design. I think that's due to, you know, the straps that they show them on. But there's a certain playfulness to the combination that I really like.
Now, just to be clear, if you're wondering what on earth he's talking about, there are some brands, I believe Biver was on the periphery of the show. They were outside exhibiting. Like, there were a lot of brands like
Quite a few.
Debatoon and Zeitwinkel and Biver and many others who were exhibiting at bars, lounges, hotels inside of Geneva. Because let's be perfectly honest, you do have to pay to be at the show. So you have to buy a booth, you have to pay, you have to staff the booth. And if you're a guy like J.C. Biver who hasn't needed to work since the 90s, you know, you're going to find the most comfortable arrangement that's cozy and accessible and frankly closer to the part of the city where people tend to stay and live and enjoy themselves if they have any spare time during the show. Over at the Pal Expo where the show's held, you're right by the airport. Airport motels are no one's idea of a luxe experience. I've stayed in a bunch of them. One of them had bed bugs. It's not exactly commensurate to the image of one of these brands. So Biver is one of those brands on the periphery of the show. Now, here's the thing. Most of the Biver watches have been incredibly expensive, incredibly complicated, incredibly exclusive. This is probably, it's not a less sophisticated watch mechanically, but it's definitely a pared down option. And if there was anything people said that was just a recurring criticism of the prior Biver watches, it's that they were a little bit overwrought or that the designs were not distinctive. I think this is where Biver wanted to go. If you look at the kind of watches he's auctioned in the past from his personal collection, a lot of them have been very compact, traditional, minimalist, vintage Patek Philippe type watches. And this feels like his modern realization of that type of watch. It's not outwardly too complex. It's just very elegant, well-proportioned, and it's got kind of a square-jawed, handsome kind of aesthetic to it.
It's 39 millimeters, it's 10 millimeters thick, and apparently about 47.5 millimeters lug end to lug end, which is really a very, very easy to wear size for a wide range of wrists.
Do you have pricing for it? Just
So the pricing is admittedly a bit up there. This is in Swiss francs, so depending on the conversion rate of the hour. So the carbon edition is 89,000 Swiss francs, and the yellow gold. The yellow gold dial non-carbon is 75,000 Swiss francs.
Okay, 75,000 is right about what I had in mind for this. You got to keep in mind that the comparable to something like this is going to be a Laurent Ferrier, classic micro rotor. This is a micro rotor automatic. The movement is very intricately detailed and decorated. You're still talking about a company that's going to be making dozens of watches a year. It's not going to be cranking up production. This is an enterprise between Biver and his son. It's a family affair. It's a retirement project. He's not bowing out. He's not, riding off into the sunset, but he's done the mass market for decades, and he's done with that. Now he wants to meet with clients face to face, and this is part of that. And I'll say a big part of the reason you would pay 70,000 Swiss francs for this is to have a personal relationship with him and be on a first name basis. That kind of access to a person like that is worth the money and then some.
I have to say, I was in the camp with the first Biver launch as thinking, this is remarkably expensive. This is something that, truthfully, nobody asked for. But, the more, and granted, I haven't held one in person. I'm sure it's beautifully finished. I'm sure it sounds amazing in person.
I've personally held the more complicated, expensive pieces. They were very impressively done.
And that's exactly what I expect. But, just from a, behind the desk type of standpoint, I thought, holy smokes, a brand new brand with I think it was a $560,000 retail minute repeater in a new type of, or rather, I won't call it a new design, but in an original design. This is interesting, but I have so many questions.
I would also say that given the scale of production and Biver's personal connections in the industry, if you really wanted to modify this and get something a little bit different, let's say white gold is what you really want, I would be shocked if you just flat out got a no.
I'll bet you'd have to have one already, and I'll bet you'd have to be friends with him already. But I'd agree.
I think this is one of those deals where it's such a personal purchase for the buyer and such a personal commitment for the vendor that he would do everything possible to make that a good experience. So let's just put that in terms of X, because last time I was in Dubai for Dubai Watch Week, I sat down with Biver and I talked about his brand, and he came exactly as advertised. Honestly, he was like robotic and still and quiet until I walked up and asked about his watch. Then all the fireworks went off at once. And it was literally the same guy you've seen for the last 30 years. Hand, fist, pounding the table, smile ear to ear, maniac look in his eye. So I'm going to ask him, if I want one of these in white gold, can I get it? And we'll find out, because he'll say. Okay, so what else did I like? I loved, and I'm going to qualify this because it was launched last year, but they must have just brought it to market, because they're only making 10 pieces at Hautlence of the Retrovision 47. Oh my God, that little thing. I love it. It's ridiculous. First of all, it's a misnomer. It's called the Retrovision 47, but it's designed to look like a vintage radio, so no vision involved. And it looks like it's made of bakelite, which would imply the case is very cheap, but it's actually hand-painted titanium, designed to look like a sort of green and white marbled bakelite from 1947. So it looks like a little old radio, and it's got a tourbillon hiding where you almost can't see it if you try, behind the so-called grill or speaker of the radio. Now, it's the opposite of a bullhead winder, and it's completely impractical as a watch because it's almost impossible to read the time. And it's almost abstruse as a tourbillon because you can't really see the tourbillon from either side. But this is so much fun, and it wears so well, and it's such a quirky piece that it speaks to me directly on an emotional level that connects with exactly what I love about watches. It's not rational, and this hits me there.
I adore this piece also. This is something that... Hautlence and H. Moser & C are owned by the same people. And this is something that I would expect from MB&F. This is a design that I would expect from MB&F. This is a quote unquote vintage throwback feeling that I would very much expect from MB&F, and it's just so cool to see Hautlence go through a bit of a, I would honestly call this a bit of a rebranding.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to say the company was precisely dormant, because if you do check their product launches, you'll find they pretty much had one announcement every year, 24, 23, 22, 21, 2019, but it feels like a brand that's been dormant for a while. It exploded onto the scene in 2004 under Guillaume Tattoo, who, by the way, has returned to the brand. But they were known in the 2000s as the TV screen or rectangular watch brand that specialized in jump hours, retrogrades, and non-round cases. And they were impressive in that regard in that they made most of the stuff themselves. It's not easy to make a movement. It's much harder to make those kind of Snapdragon mechanisms in-house. Things like retrogrades and jump hours can get pretty specialized, and most companies will leave that to a movement supplier or module specialist. And Hautlence did it itself. Now, of course, this whole idea of having a quirky watch really fell out of favor after the 2000s. They struggled through the 2010s. Even though they were never quite defunct, the brand was definitely on life support. And MELB Holdings, which has gone from strength to strength with Moser since they revitalized it from 2012 forward, they've even struggled a little bit with how to relaunch Hautlence. And the idea today seems to be make Hautlence a styling house and let Moser provide the movements. And that's what they've done so far with watches like the Sphere and the Linear and the Retrovision 47 and the Retrovision 85, which is fun in its own way. I don't love it as much, but if you ever wanted a wristwatch with flying hours and a tourbillon that changes into a transformer that's also a clock, that's your watch, the Retrovision 85, but it's still a Moser movement.
It's the watch that I wanted when I was 10, to a T, without a doubt. And it's so much fun. I was a bit, I was like, oh, what is that when that came out? But, it's a great grown-up watch for a 10-year-old, and I mean that in the best way, endearingly.
It's kind of funny because someone watching my show on the 14th, he said that this reminded him of the radio from the Brave Little Toaster, and I was just awash with nostalgia because I remember that movie from when I was a little kid, and it's absolutely true.
I remember the blanket with the dial, and I remember the vacuum cleaner. Oh man!
I remember that there were some pretty trippy moments in that movie. Like it wasn't as straight a kiddie play as you think it was. Like there were some Ren and Stimpy moments in there
shows
where you're
got weird back then, and it was great.
That was either for the stoners who were watching this for the lulz, back before we had that term. But there was some stuff in there that was designed to perk the adults back up, and so yeah, that's exactly what the Retrovision 47 looks like. I wish the best to Hautlence. The people there are good folks. Guillaume Tattoo's back on board. He's kind of like the spiritual center of the whole thing since he was there at the beginning. What else did you like? I mean, I got to tell you, from the outside looking in, you've got a perspective probably on more stuff than I saw, because I was only engaged with the brands I met with directly. That was 25 of them, granted, but 20 fewer than were actually in the hall.
So I kind of continuously look throughout the weeks after Watches and Wonders, just because there's always something that's missed on the first week of releases. And, I myself am having a million different conversations with, dozens of people surrounding said releases. But the Parmigiani Toric Perpetual calendar blew me away. I am so thrilled with Parmigiani's update to the Toric design. I love the watch. I have liked the watch for quite some time. And I think the forward motion in which they're taking it, or in which they're giving it, is fantastic. It's exactly the direction they need to go. It's very Parmigiani yet modern, and it's just very clean. Admittedly, and possibly foolishly, my biggest qualm with Parmigiani is the name. The way that it looks written out on a dial bothers me for some reason.
I mean, they have sort of remedied that.
And I was just about to say, they fixed it. They completely fixed it. And, I'm not one to love a sterile dial. I'm not one to love a perfectly clean dial. But what they've done with the Toric Perpetual calendar is they've cleaned up the overall dial while giving you all the information of a perpetual calendar in two very clean, very legible subdials. And, the case on this is supreme to me. I like a good coin edge. This is a great modern coin edge that doesn't feel like it's trying to be something that it's not. It doesn't feel like it's reaching, back into the 70s and 80s. It doesn't feel like anything but a watch that can be worn in the 2000s, and I say that to its credit. And I just think it's a nice, clean perpetual with some good options in terms of configurations. Pricing's neither here nor there because I really like the watch.
Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit there. It's an interesting watch because it almost looks more like a chronograph than a perpetual calendar. Yeah. It's a great size at 40.6 millimeters, and keep in mind, guys, Parmigiani has been doing solid gold movements for decades, and this has one of them. This is a very respectable offering. I would say it's not even that expensive for what it is and for the scale of production. Guido Torreni, the CEO of the brand, really thoughtful, insightful guy, non-generic interview, knows his stuff. He's a hardware guy. He's a product guy. And I think what's great here is that he's showing that the brand is more than just sports watches. They, like many, rode the integrated bracelet sports watch trend through the pandemic years and beyond. This is fantastic because it's a well-received, thoughtful, successful execution by Parmigiani that shows there is a lot more to the company than just those sports watches. If they needed a second act, this is a great start. I really like it. Now, I'm only going to say I like the way it looks because I hate the idea. But the IWC 328908, which is the Brad Pitt F1 the movie version of the Ingenieur Automatic 40, I really like the way it looks. I think the yellow gold indices and hands on an electric green metallic dial in a steel case looks really nice. I don't love the idea of 61-year-old Brad Pitt playing an F1 driver. I'm sorry, but old in F1 is Fernando Alonso, not 60s, 40s. Like, you can only stretch so far. And I think Brad Pitt as an F1 driver kind of reminds me of Nigel Mansell's second comeback when he was too fat to fit in the car. I'm sure Brad will put in the time in the gym, but I just find it an absurd premise. And really, the popularity of that watch down the line shouldn't have any relation to the success of the movie one way or another, because look how much people love the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore End of Days. Have you ever seen the movie? I mean, that's like an open question. If the answer is no, you're already ahead of the game. If the answer is yes, I commiserate.
I was just trying to think, have I seen End of Days? I love Arnold.
I mean, I love Arnold too, but look, at every point in a career, there's that moment when you stare into the abyss and wonder, how did I get here? And for Arnold Schwarzenegger, End of Days was that moment.
I can't disagree. I know enough about the movie that it doesn't matter if I've seen it or not at this point.
Here's the premise. Arnold fights the devil. There you go. You don't need to see it now.
Which, honestly, the premise sounds amazing.
It's not a bad idea. 15 years before, it would have been awesome.
If you're talking like, let's see, like a muscular, like Dave Grohl from the Tenacious D movie Devil, then sign me up.
Yeah, or like Mickey Rourke playing the devil or something like that. That would have been cool.
That would have been really cool.
That would have been, you see, that's what they should have done.
Give me a Ron Perlman, Hellboy adjacent feeling, something like that.
Like get a badass character actor to play the devil. Like, that's the perfect cast for like a satanic figure. Just like a hard-bitten character actor. What was the name of the guy who played Proximo in Gladiator?
Oh, good question.
Like, he would have been a great devil. I know he died in a bar winning a marathon of arm wrestling matches against sailors, which sounds like a heroic death, by the way.
That sounds amazing. Oliver Reed?
Oliver Reed. That he would have been a great devil. But we're getting off track here. Okay.
Tom Waits?
Yeah. I would say this. I liked the Piaget Polo 79 in white gold. It's now something I could wear.
Yes, I literally just scrolled past that on my screen. I think, it's almost an expected release, but I wanted it. I wanted it, and I didn't even know I wanted it, and I'm so happy to see it. We've talked about that watch kind of ad nauseum, but the case construction, the bracelet construction, the overall construction of that watch is so cool. In precious metal, it's just it's jewelry craft.
The history, the design, the size, the fit, the proportions, the way it's made, everything about that watch is perfect. It's just coming out in yellow gold. It was very true to history, but it's almost like if the Jaguar E-Type came out in 1961 and the only color you could get was hot pink, you'd be like, I love everything about this car except for one thing. If you're that guy who wanted it in hot pink, you're golden. But everyone else was waiting for like the next model year. And that's not how it happened, happily. But that's sort of what it's like when a watch comes out in yellow gold and you love everything about it except the full yellow gold bracelet. Okay, so we talked a lot about full bracelets. We talked about IWC full bracelets, Parmigiani full bracelets. We talked about the Piaget Polo 79, which admittedly is a different thing because it's actually from the 70s. It's not a Me Too watch. It's not gloaming onto a trend.
Fair point.
The bracelet trend itself is something that is either in a period of transition or beginning to taper off. Well, what do you think?
So integrated bracelets, that is, I can't help but feel like it has to be beginning to taper off. And you know, part of my reasoning with that is seeing what I think is going to be the next trend in bracelets, and that is handmade dressy bracelets on dress watches, such as the Golden Ellipse, the 5738 in rose gold with the, I mean, gorgeously crafted, you know, the hot jewelry level bracelet in rose gold, and this year's release, JLC Reverso on full bracelet,
the
which
Or
was
Deco.
really, really special.
So I know that we're probably going to have photos. We're not going to have a video, but we should have photos in this podcast. So, guys, if you could put up a picture of the Tribute Small Second Or Deco so our audience can see what a Milanese mesh bracelet made from 16 meters of rose gold thread looks like. What an execution. Now,
Gorgeous.
This is not integrating a bracelet. This is not a sports watch in any sense, but it is a beautifully complete composition. I like the idea of the bracelet as the element that completes the watch rather than the piece that defines the watch. To me, this is the exclamation mark.
Very well said. I like that statement a lot. They did a step further too. Generally, with bracelets like this, with this type of kind of the Milanese style, you generally get a bracelet that either you're going to have screwed in lugs or you're going to have to cut. Now, the cutting has kind of gone a bit of the way of the dodo, as we don't really cut bracelets anymore in precious metal. But what they've done is kind of a friction fit slide through system to get the perfect fit on this watch. There are no holes in the bracelet to put a tang through. There is nothing but the friction fit of the clasp itself, which is very evocative of those older pieces. It's very evocative of kind of the slide through, clasp down, and maintain the entirety of the metal on the bracelet.
And it's also nice because a little bit like Velcro, the system gives you infinite adjustability. If you want to make 0.5 millimeter of adjustment, your hand is steady enough, you can do it. So you're never going to get caught in between holes or in between link sizes. This is a really smart design, and it's only 7.5 millimeters thick, which is incredibly slim for something that has a complex rotating case. So this is a really appealing watch on so many levels, and it's an original idea. It's not like they brought back the Reverso Art Deco from the 90s, although this is a nod to it, which I like. What a great piece. I think we'll probably eventually see it in white gold or even yellow gold, and I'm all for it. I want more options, not fewer. I think this is a very special watch. I think this is a great way to use precious metal in a way that seems native to the concept. It's not like they've made a precious metal version of a steel watch in hopes of providing for a few more points of margin. Like, this feels like it could only be precious metal. Like, it would be cool to get a steel Milanese, but I would almost rather keep this special.
I totally agree with that. But I do think that this is the kind of the next trend in bracelets. It is this potential of the dressy bracelet, which is something that has kind of been, if you're a forum guy like myself, I've been looking at watch forums for 20 years now. But if you're a forum guy, it's kind of a faux pas, a dress bracelet almost. And I would argue that, between Patek, between JLC, with, Longa has had some beautiful dressy bracelets. It's not something that was ever gone, but it was never in the forefront, and it's often questioned.
I would also say this. You can draw heavily on the 70s and never cross paths with the integrated bracelet genre. There were some incredible bracelets in the 70s. And yeah, Milanese and beads of rice is sort of the tip of the iceberg. Everyone knows about those. But there were some incredible link designs and clasp designs and end link profiles. Oh my gosh, remember all those Patek Philippe Beta 21 watches and the bracelets that came on those? Unbelievable.
Cuff bracelets, rally style, weird, almost Royal Oak adjacent links before it was common.
And I think we could see a big comeback on that front. People are still into bracelets. I think there's an incipient movement towards offering more watches with bracelets outside the sports genre. A good example of that would be something like Patek Philippe with the 4947 annual calendar, the one that has the Shantung dial.
Or 5960 1A.
Yeah, or the 5905 1A. None of these are hardcore over-the-top sports watches. They're all-arounders or they're borderline dressy. And I see a lot of room there to really start moving into a world where something like a JLC Master watch is frequently purchased on a bracelet instead of a strap. And I see a real value in that because, first of all, it looks good, it feels good. But second, it does save you some money down the line. Every couple of years, you don't have to worry about spending hundreds of dollars on a strap. And I find particularly if you live in a hot place, a bracelet is aces. It's also just a more robust look. A bracelet can make a small watch look big. So if you want wrist presence, you can achieve that with a bracelet without making the watch larger, and that is something I am all in favor of.
And that's, kind of underscores the kind of the classicism of the day-date and presidential bracelet. Not to bring it into that.
No, but it's a good example.
There's a lot of gentlemen, there's a lot of watch collectors, I should say, who wear day dates on straps, and the presence is changed instantaneously by a bracelet.
Let me talk about Tudor, which we love so dearly because they have a 5-link Jubilee-style bracelet that's available on the Black Bay 58 right now.
Looks great, too.
It's a dress-style bracelet on a vintage-style dive watch, and it looks fantastic. It's a relatively recent arrival, and it creates something that is unique. I cannot think of a whole lot of sports watches that you can get from the manufacturer on a dress-style bracelet. This is a rotating bezel dive watch. And it looks great.
It really, really does. Tudor, we didn't really mention it, but Tudor had a pretty good year. I'm a big fan of the white Black Bay Pro and a big fan of the new Pelagos.
What do you think of the new Journe?
The Furtif, the Chronomètre Furtif?
Yeah.
So you know me, I'm a fanboy, Tim. I really am. I like black. My favorite thing about it is that he incorporated tungsten carbide. I think that is outrageous. I think it's awesome.
I love that.
I love it. Now, and I also I like Journe sports watches. I really am holding my judgment for this to see it in person. I know we'll see it at some point. My qualm with this case, and this is my one single qualm, is the flat bezel.
It's going to be a polarizing thing. It's like the Patek Philippe 5107 that had an incredibly flat bezel, almost to the point that it was perfectly flush. It's not a look everyone loves, but you love it or you hate it. I think some people are going to be really put off by a flat bezel, whereas I like it for some reason. I think it's really cool. I have to say, I'm not a Journe fanboy, and kind of notorious for that in some respects. This is cool. I like this. I like almost everything about this. I love the pop of yellow on the seconds hand.
I think that's cool too.
I love the ghosted black enamel dial. I love the fact that you could probably use this thing to scratch a hole in a window and break in. Like, this thing is indestructible. You could use this thing to cut glass. It's literally as hard as any material you will find. Tungsten carbide versus ceramic, I think, first of all, tungsten carbide's not going to shatter like ceramic will, but it's just as hard, at least as hard. It's an incredibly resilient material. And given how vulnerable the peened style frosted finishes on most Journe sports watches are, this is the antidote. I love this. I could do without the power reserve and the moon phase on the back. I almost don't care. I just like this a lot. This is my favorite Journe release since the Chronomètre Optimum.
Well, that's big words. Love to hear that. You know, coming from a jewelry perspective, I started in one of our retail stores, of course, but tungsten carbide is one of those materials that when it's always a gentleman who comes in and asks for it. When a gentleman comes in and asks for a tungsten carbide engagement ring or wedding ring, excuse me, the conversation is always, you know what, you should do titanium instead. And the reason behind that is you can't cut tungsten carbide. If you break your finger and you go to the hospital, if you're, I don't know, if you're playing softball or football and you jam your finger and it swells up and it's your wedding ring finger, you cannot cut through that tungsten carbide. The hospital will not be able to do it. And it's one of those things that it's not something that you think about too often, but I remember probably about a dozen times I've talked people out of a tungsten carbide ring. That's how hard it is.
I'm amazed that many people came in asking for tungsten carbide rings.
All the time. All the time. And it's just because, it's a dark metal. It kind of looks liquid when it's high polish, and it's got a really cool look to it. I'm a precious metal guy when it comes to jewelry, but a lot of guys really want that kind of dark, liquidy look to their ring. And that's why I always go with titanium.
Yeah, so if you want your ring removed by something other than an industrial laser, don't go with tungsten carbide. You see, you would know that. As a person who started on the shop floor, you got that insight. I started as an internet guy, selling watches over the phone down in Florida. So you got that insight into what people are wearing, and then you're also a married man, so you went through that whole process. All I can say is that I've been in like a number of abusive relationships with various machines that have cleaned me out. Cars and watches and some types of audio equipment and guitars. I always get the short end of that stick. Maybe I should just marry a woman and be done with it. Much, much less complicated. Okay, so relationships aside, what do we think could take the place of this tapering bracelet trend? Because I feel like we're definitely on the downslope of the integrated bracelet. We're not done yet, but this is the 15th minute. So what comes next?
Other than the continuation of kind of dressier bracelets, I think systems like the quick release system on the Santos, the quick release system on the new Overseas, I think that is really the next trend. And not to say that, everything's going to be integrated like those are, but I think brands will give options, a little bit more option.
Okay, so I'm looking at this from more of like a style trend. So I'm thinking that the things that come next are going to be those weird, we've seen so many of these glass box sapphires where we're now at a point in sapphire manufacture where you can make a bubble-like sapphire on an affordable watch. It's no longer the kind of thing that you only see on, say, like the Corum Bubble, or a legacy machine from MB&F. So we're seeing all sorts of watches from Omega and Tag Heuer and other watch brands that are looking to achieve like a plexi look from the 60s, or trying to give their watch a little bit of a vaulted profile to allow for more clearance of complications like a Genus or something like that. I think bubble-like glass box crystals, sometimes to the total exclusion of any visible bezel, are like the next style trend. I would also say that some combination of purple and brown dials is coming. That's coming.
I'm waiting for the purple. I'm waiting for the purple.
And then there's one more thought. And we've just started seeing the first flowerings of it. But you've seen a lot of brands using CVD to get really bright colors on watches. Like Chrono Swiss is probably the best example of that. Like those candy-like metallic colors that are green and orange and purple and blue, and they look almost like bright foil. You can't do that with PVD. That's CVD. And I think we're going to see more of that in the industry because it's not line of sight. It's a gaseous transfer that can equally coat every facet of a complex shape. And then I think we're going to see something else, which is called Cerakote, which is going to come over from knives and high-end eyewear. I think you're going to start seeing Cerakote because with Cerakote, you can add a lot of super durable, colorful finishes on metal surfaces, and you can deliver a watch that cannot fracture like ceramic but has a lot of the same advantages. And I think we'll see it first on watches like, I don't know, Panerai, where you've got more of like a tactical aesthetic and a rugged sort of design ethic. But I think it'll find its way to everything in time.
I think there's also an air of kind of artistic precision that you can get with Cerakote as well, that you can't with a lot of other different types of coatings. You know, you can use a little. I forget what they're called, but it's a little pen with the tiny reservoir in the top, and it's just kind of like a small paint application pen to apply Cerakote extremely accurately. And I think we'll even see some micro art stuff with that for some kind of, I don't want to say entry level, but, you know, kind of slightly above entry level independence.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing where it looks good everywhere. So it could just as easily, for a really coherent look, be used on the case, but then also on the dial.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see more of that. And then I'm almost reluctant to say this, but I think we're going to see a lot of, quote, Damascus steels and titaniums brought over from the knife world. I think that's coming. It's not to everyone's taste. When some brands do it, it's cool because they're super niche, they're avant-garde, and they're looking to provoke. But I can easily see this going over the top as companies cheaply dye cases to look like Damascus layers.
That's my worry. You know, the Zinn does a fantastic job with their Damascus pieces. I think they're really cool. I think they don't advertise themselves quite as loudly as kind of some other Damascus that I've seen, like and not to use a negative phrase, but like a mall ninja Damascus, you know. It represents itself much more as a material rather than what you said, a coating or a case dyeing, and that's what's the important thing. The brands that do it as a material, you know, the forged, folded idea of Damascus.
If you're going to put in the time to fold metal that many times, great.
Yes. Do it right. Do it the right way. Don't go for the look and not the overall production.
I think you're going to see a lot of stuff come over from high-end knife smithing, because one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of guys who buy watches also have all these artisanal knives. They're not ninjas, they're not security guards, they're not fishermen or law enforcement. They just like them for aesthetics and craftsmanship.
You know, fellow trader and friend Jason Main got me on... I have been collecting knives for a long time, but Jason kind of forced me into that next level, and it's almost frustrating, but God, it's fun, you know?
Yeah, so all sorts of fire annealing, Damascus folding, various types of polishing and sharpening, engraving.
Heat coloring.
Yeah, Cerakote. You're going to see all this stuff coming over from custom knives into the watch world, and I think at first it's going to be on watches that are very rugged and pitched towards, you know, kind of the crossover customer like Jason Main, who's into knives and guns and watches. But then eventually you're going to see it also move over to, you know, the artistic world, where Aaron Becet's already done a Dignitas collaboration with a high-end knife smith and used an alloy made by a knife smith. And I think guys like, you know, you'll probably see James Thompson from Black Badger, or maybe a super concept brand like Artia that does a lot of low-volume art pieces. And I think from there it'll go into the mainstream.
It's funny, the gentleman behind Hodinkee Burkus, which is a really cool, fun, small brand, actually makes a few knives as well. And a good friend and client of mine is soon to take delivery, I think. It's funny how much crossover there actually is. That's a really good kind of branch to grab onto for the next like era of trends. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think this is like, if the integrated bracelet is now in its 15th minute of fame, this is like the first few seconds of the knife watch crossover. It's the early innings. I think we'll know that it has run its trend when we see something like the Vacheron Constantin Patrimony Tactical come out. That'll be the end of it.
Vacheron branded NATO, $899.99.
Spec War. with like a unit logo on the back.
It'll be like the old Army Corps of Engineer chronographs, but just a new styling of it.
I actually like that idea.
I do too.
That'd be kind of cool. Please make that happen. The Patrimony Extreme Pocket Watch. Okay, Armand, where can people find us online?
You can find me on Instagram at It's Me Armand, or email me at armand@the1916company.com.
You probably already know where to find me, but if you want the insight into my personal life, check out Tim_Masso on Instagram. It's a bunch of watches and the world of Tim Masso. And until next time, time out.